Hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Nur Hamiza binti Khalil from class JM 1103C, and also my friends Nurin Adelina, Hana Humaira, Jasmine Jeffrey, and Fai Azri. Okay, so today we're gonna discuss or talk about racism and gender discrimination in our society. But before we continue our discussion, I would like to invite Fai Azri to receive the doa.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim. Sesungguhnya kami berhimpun pada hari ini bagi menyayakan kesyukuran di atas kurniaan-Mu yang tidak ternilai. Jadikanlah kami hamba-hamba-Mu yang sentiasa bersyukur sama ada nikmat yang sedikit, lebih-lebih lagi nikmat yang menimpa ruah kepada kami. Ya Fattahu Ya Alim. Sesungguhnya Engkau Maha mengetahui bahawa kami di sini ingin menimba ilmu-Mu yang sangat meluas bagi mengembangkan potensi kami sebagai hamba-Mu yang Engkau redai. Justru berkatilah dan rahmatilah perhimpunan kami ini. Kurniakanlah kepada kami apa kiranya ilmu-Mu. Sinarilah hati-hati kami dengan cahaya dan hidayah-Mu. Semoga dengannya kami mudah menerima dan menghayati serta mengamalkannya. Ya Zal Jalahi wal Ikram, kurniakanlah apa kiranya kepada kami kesihatan anggota, kecergasan minda, ketenangan jiwa, kekuatan semangat. Semoga dengannya kami mampu mendepani cabaran, berdaya saing dan mampu mengangkat martabat diri, keluarga, organisasi, masyarakat dan negara agar kami dapat menamatkan program pada hari ini dengan jayanya. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina azabannar. Wassallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi washabihi wasallam. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.
Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. Thank you so much, Faik Azri, for reciting the doa. So, okay, now we're gonna continue our discussion. But before we start, I'm gonna explain about the content or what we're gonna talk about in our discussion. So, the first one we're gonna talk about or discuss about the introduction, which is the definition of racism and also gender discrimination, and then we're gonna discuss about the types of both of them, racism and also sexism, and then we're gonna discuss about the examples that happened today and also the past several years ago, and then we're gonna talk about the right that we have and also factors that lead to the racism and also gender discrimination. And then we're gonna talk about why is this such a big issue to be talked about, and then what steps can we do to end the racism, and also could there be troubles that can lead up to the end of racism. And at the end of the discussion, we're gonna talk about the best solution to stop racism and also gender discrimination today and upcoming generation. So I'm gonna pass to Fai Azri to explain about the meaning or the definition of racism and also gender discrimination.
Hi, my name is Muhammad Fai Azri bin Zahari. Today I would like to talk about the interaction. What is racism and gender discrimination, and why this happen to our society? Racism are also called racism that believe that humans be divided into separate and exclusive biological entities called race. That is a causal link between inherent physical trait and trait of personality, intellect, morality, and other cultures and behavior feature. Discrimination based on gender or sex is a common civil right violation that takes many forms, including sexual harassment, pregnancy discrimination, and unequal pay for women who do the same job as a man. Unfortunately, most US women are all too familiar with all these inequalities. This section offers in a deep information on unlocked gender and sex discrimination in a number of settings, including employment and education, and provide link to key federal law of U.S. Supreme Court decision related to gender and sex discrimination. Gender discrimination law also protect the right of transgender individuals. Since the mid-20th century, many conflicts around the world have been interpreted with racial term and gender discrimination, even though their origin were in the ethnic hostilities that has long characterized many human society and their gender. Racism reflects on the acceptance of the deepest form and degrees of diverseness and carries the implication that difference between groups are so great that they cannot be transcended. Next, because in the popular mind, race is a link to physical difference among people, and such features as dark skin color have been seen as a marker of low status. Some experts believe that racism may be difficult to eradicate. Indeed, mind cannot be changed by law, but belief about human difference can do change, as do all culture elements. Girls and women suffer most of the negative impact of rigid gender norms and rules. They are more likely to experience restriction of their freedom and mobility. They experience epidemic level of violence and harassment across the globe and have fewer opportunities to choose how to live their life. Boys and men suffer too. Ideas about what it means to be a man force boys and men to behave in very limited way which can harm them. Negative masculinity is encouraged in a boy serve to perpetuate the circle of discrimination and inequality. Denying people the freedom to choose their part in life because of their gender prevent them from fulfilling their full potential. There is a lot we can do to help build a more gender equal world. Understanding the deep root of gender inequality and challenging discrimination when we see it are the first step. Okay, that's all for me. I hope that you can understand about what is the racism and gender discrimination and why this happen in our society. So we continue with the next slide. Thank you.
Alright, thank you again, Faik, for the information or sharing about the definition of gender discrimination and racism. So now I'm gonna explain and sharing about what is the types of racism and also gender discrimination, or we call sexism. But I want to talk about the racism first. So as you can see here, there are 4 slides. So the first one is individual or internalized racism. This is racism that exists within individual. It is when one holds negative idea about his or her own culture, even if unknowingly. Xenophobic feelings or one's internalized sense of oppression and also privilege are 2 examples of individual or internalized racism. Second is interpersonal racism. This is the racism that occurs between individuals. This is the holding of negative attitude towards a different race or culture. Interpersonal racism often following a victim or perpetrator model. Number 3 is institutional racism. Institutional racism, recognizing that racism need not be individual or intentional. Institutional racism refers to institutional and cultural practices that perpetuate racial inequality. Benefits are structured to advantage powerful groups at the expenses of others. For examples of institutional racism is Jim Crow laws and also redlining. So both of them is the examples of institutional racism. And last but not least is structural racism. So structural racism refers to the ways in which the joint operation of institutions such as inter-institutional arrangements and interactions. It produces racialized outcomes even in the absence of racist intent. Indicators of structural racism include power inequalities, unequal access to opportunities, and differing policy outcomes by race, because these effects are reinforced across multiple institutions. The root cause of structural racism are difficult to isolate. So, structural racism is cumulative, recessive, and also durable. I believe you guys never heard about systemic racism. Of course, you guys gonna say, what is systemic racism? So let me explain. What is systemic racism? So nationwide protests in recent weeks have rekindled a roaring public discourse about racial inequality in America. So we're gonna take America as an example country because they have a huge or big issues about racism and also gender discrimination. But other countries have also the same problem too. But we're gonna focus in America because there are a lot of issues there, and I'm gonna take one of the example in that country. So according, have you guys heard about George Floyd? Right? I think you guys know because it has been viral before this, right? So George Floyd's death in police custody on May 25, I think, May 25, let loose a groundswell of public rage about the way Black Americans are policed. But it also sparked a deeper conversation about the way they experience all aspects of modern life, whether it's underrepresentation in college attainment rates or overrepresentation in COVID-19 hospitalization. Extensive academic research and data collected by the federal government and researchers has documented numerous ways that Black Americans experience life in the United States are different to compare with white Americans in that country. So this is called systemic racism because it's ingrained in nearly every way people move through society, in the policies and practice at institutions like banks, schools, companies, government, agencies, and also law enforcement. So I'm going to show the example of the systemic racism. So let's go to the next slide. Alright, so this is one of the example of systemic racism. So based on this chart, this is a chart about unemployment rates of Black and white Americans in America. So as we can see here, the color, the orange color, is a Black population. For example, we can see the percentage of Black people are really high because they don't get job to compare with white people since 2007 until year 2019. So just as Black employment has historically been lower than for whites, the unemployment rate among Black Americans been higher, while unemployment was slightly lower for white and Latino Americans. In May, after a surprisingly good jobs report, the rate continued to tick up for Black workers. So, right now, I'm going to share or talk about the types of sexism and also gender discrimination. So, what is the type of sexism or gender discrimination? People categorize sexism in several ways. Sexism can be hostile, sexism can be benevolent, sexism can be ambivalent. So, these terms come from the ambivalent sexism. Sexism can operate on different levels in society. It can be institutional, it can be interpersonal, it can be internalized. So, as you can see here, there are 6 types of sexism. The first one is hostile sexism. This refers to beliefs and behaviors that are openly hostile toward a group of people based on their sex or gender. Misogyny or the hatred of women is an example of hostile sexism. People who hold views that are hostile and sexist may view women as manipulative, deceitful, capable of using seduction to control men, and also needing to be kept in their place. These views may also apply to anyone with feminine traits and anyone who expresses their gender in a way that is associated with femininity. People who perpetuate hostile sexism want to preserve men's dominance over women and people of either marginalized genders. They typically oppose gender equality and may also oppose to LGBTQ rights, seeing these things as a threat to men and the system that benefits them. The second one is benevolent sexism. Benevolent sexism includes views and behaviors that frame women as innocent, pure, caring, and nurturing, fragile, and in need of protection, and also beautiful. Based on one of the study I found, I think 2020 study, a study from 2020, study involving participants in the United States and United Kingdom found that people who believe in humanity's dominance over nature and who saw a woman as being more closely connected with nature than men were more likely to exhibit benevolent sexism. For example, we can say basing women's value on her role as a mother, wife, or girlfriend, also focusing attention and praise on someone's appearance rather than their other attributes. The examples like believing that people should not do things for themselves, such as manage money or drive car because of their gender. So, number 3 is ambivalent sexism. This is a combination of benevolent and hostile sexism. People who engage in ambivalent sexism may vary between seeing women as good, pure, and innocent and seeing them as manipulative or deceitful depending on the situation. Benevolent sexism offers women protection in exchange for them adopting a more subordinate role, while hostile sexism targets those who divide from this. For this reason, some refer to the former as such as Plan A and the latter as Plan B. For example, we can say hiring someone because they are attractive, then firing them if they do not respond to sexual advance. And also, the example of that is differentiating between good women and bad women based on how they dress. Oh my god, that's really disgusting. Number 4 is institutional sexism. This refers to sexism that is entrenched in organization and institutions such as the government, the legal system, the education system, and also the healthcare system. It also have financial institution, the media, and other workplace. When policies, procedures, attitudes, or law could create or reinforce sexism, this is institutional sexism. Institutional sexism is widespread. It can be hostile, benevolent, or ambivalent. one of the clearest indicators is the lack of gender diversity among political leaders or business executives. Another indicator is the gender pay gap. This refers to a difference in the average pay that women and men receive for similar work. As for example, in United States, according to the one of the statistic I found is a woman earns 82 cents for every dollar that a man earns. Overall, women earns less than men in almost every occupation. This gap is wider for women with children and for Black, Latina, Indigenous, Asian, and Pacific Islander women. Number 5 is interpersonal sexism. This manifests during interaction with others. It can occur in the workplace, within relationship, among family members, and interactions with strangers. For example, we can saw is telling someone to be more ladylike, judging someone for not fitting into stereotypes of femininity such as being caring or submissive, making inappropriate comments about someone's appearance, talking down to someone based on assumption about their genders, engaging in unwanted sexual attention or touching, and also justifying sexist behavior by saying boys will be boys. Last but not least is internalized sexism. Internalized sexism refers to sexist belief that a person has about themselves. Usually, a person adopts this belief involuntarily as a result of exposure to sexist behavior or the opinions of others. Internalized sexism may cause feeling of incompetence, self-doubt, powerlessness, and also shame. It also causes people to unintentionally collude with sexism. For example, making self-deprecating jokes about one gender, such as blonde jokes, someone basing their self-worth on how desirable they are in the eyes of men, and then feeling ashamed of aspects of being female, such as having periods or female genitalia. This is the example of internalized sexism. Actually, I have many examples, but I'm gonna give to Hannah because she wanna tell or gonna talk or discuss about the example more wide about sexism and also racism, which is the example that have been like since the old past years and also until today. So I'm gonna give Hannah to share about it.
Workplace gender discrimination comes in many different forms, but generally it means that an employee or a job applicant is treated differently or less favorably because of their sex, gender identity, or sexual orientation. Even though the words sex and gender have different meanings, law against discrimination at work often use them interchangeably. Sometimes workers experience discrimination because of their gender and something else, like their race or ethnicity. For example, a woman of color may experience discrimination in the workplace differently from a white female coworker. She may be harassed, pay less, evaluate more harshly, or pass over for promotion because of the combination of her gender and also her race. Some examples of treatment that could be gender discrimination include not being hired or being given a lower paying position because of your gender identity or sexual orientation. For example, when an employer refuses to hire women or only hires women for certain jobs only. Next is being held to different or higher standard or being evaluated more harshly because of your gender identity or because you don't act or present yourself in a way that conforms to traditional ideas or femininity or masculinity. For example, if a worker who identifies as a woman receives a negative performance evaluation that criticizes her for being too aggressive, while men who behave the same way are praised for showing leadership. Or if she wears her hair short and is told she needs to be more presentable, she may be experiencing discrimination based on gender stereotypes, which is a form of gender discrimination. The third one is being paid less than other person of a different gender or sexual orientation who is similarly or less qualified than you, or who has similar or fewer job duties than you. Next is being denied a promotion, pay raise, or training opportunities that is given to people of another gender identity or sexual orientation who are equally or less qualified or eligible as you. Next is being written up or disciplined for something that other employees of a different gender do all the time but never get punished for. Next is being insulted, called derogatory names or slurs because of your gender identity, or hearing hostile remarks about people of a certain gender identity or sexual orientation. And lastly is being rejected for a job, forced out on leave, or given fewer assignments because you are pregnant. So we have the right to the first one. Our right is to work in a safe, discrimination-free environment. Your employer is required by law to provide a safe working environment that is not hostile to you based on your sex, gender identity, or sexual orientation. The second one is we have the right to talk about or speak out against gender discrimination at work, whether it's happening to you or to someone else. You can talk about discrimination that's happening at work with whoever you want, including the coworkers and your supervisor. You also have the right to tell your employer that you believe a company policy, practice, or manager is discriminatory or engaging in discrimination. It is illegal for your employer to retaliate against or punish you for talking with coworkers about discrimination. Next is report the discriminatory behavior or policy to HR or your boss. So, report to HR, your boss, or someone else at your company who has power. We highly recommend submitting the complaint or report in writing, whether by email or letter, and making copies so you have proof later if you need it. And lastly is make a copy of your personal life. You can request to see your personal life, which could contain performance evaluation, your employment and pay history, and other useful information that could be used as evidence if you decide to take legal action. Your HR department or union representative should have information about how to get your personal file for review. So that is why it is important to make a copy of your personal file. So that's all from me. Now I will hand over my turn to Nurin Adelina. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah, for explaining the previous slides in detail. Next, I will share the factors that lead to racism happen in our society. The first factor that lead to racism is discrimination policies. Policies that discriminate by race and keep people in poverty reinforce racist beliefs. Housing laws are a prime example of this. Many laws keep black people from owning houses in certain neighborhoods, relegating them to lower quality housing and preventing them from accumulating wealth. Society looks at this and believes it justifies beliefs about how black people only live in low-income, crime-ridden neighborhoods and that it is somehow a choice. The second factor is media representation. We can see how media such as books, TV, music, movies, and etc. represents race has a big impact on how society views race. While the media is a reflection of a culture at large, it keeps racial stereotypes alive and well, and therefore fuels racism. Racism in the media is often subtle and without malicious intent, but it has incredibly negative effects. As an example, black men are overrepresented in the media as perpetrators of violent crime, while black people are also overrepresented in news stories about poverty. This affects black people's view of themselves and as well as society's perception of black people. The next factor is living in an echo chamber. People only interacting with people who share the same beliefs is a root cause of racism for individuals. If someone is surrounded by racist family members or friends, they will likely share those same beliefs. Even positive generalizations about race are harmful and difficult to challenge if someone is a part of a diverse community. Never stepping outside an echo chamber keeps racism alive. The fourth factor that leads to racism is failing to recognize racism in oneself. People aren't good at recognizing racism in themselves. Many believe that racism can only look like slavery, segregation, or specifically negative and blatant references to race. People often fall into the trap that as long as someone isn't wearing a white hood or using racial slurs, they can't be racist. This failure to recognize prejudice, accept responsibility, and be better is a key reason why racism is still so persistent. Moving to the next factor is quick judgment. People are very quick to judge others based on their appearance, their clothing, how they talk, and other physical traits. Because of how the media represents race and the persistence of racist beliefs, it's very easy to categorize entire groups of people as lazy, violent, loud, and so on. Sometimes the generalizations are necessarily bad, like how Asian people are frequently stereotyped as smart and quiet. When not challenged, this lightning fast judgment have a significant impact on how people are perceived and the kinds of opportunities they get. The last factor is casting blame. For many people, blaming others is a reflex. You can hear it in statements like illegal immigrants are stealing our jobs. Society always looks for a scapegoat when things aren't going very well. Historically, racial and often religious minorities that put into that role. To justify this scapegoating, racist beliefs are deployed. This full resentment and bitterness, making already vulnerable people even more vulnerable. That's all for the factors that lead to racism. I will pass the next presentation slides about why is this such a big issue to be talked about to Jasmine.
So for the next slide, we will talk about why this is a big issue to be talked about. Racism. That is quite big title, right? The issue is much bigger than ourselves. It's very important for people to acknowledge, especially now, how important the issue is. People's life has been taken from them and left lots of family grieving because of the color of their skin. People are treated differently because of the color of their skin and their background. So now I will talk about things that we can do to end our racism in our community. When it comes to defending racism and prejudice, there isn't just one right way to make a difference. There are many. The most important thing you can do is to find so many ways to act right now, right where you are. Here are several ideas to get you started. So the first one, we have be aware of our own prejudice. We all have bias and prejudice, right? Because we have all been exposed to racist image, ideas, and it is very important to be aware of our own prejudice so that
we can choose new thought and pattern and action. Next, we have be a healing presence. If someone you know have experienced racism, try not to explain away their experience. Instead, you can listen to an open heart. Healing begins when others care enough to hear somebody else's pain. So next, we have educate ourselves. We all need to expand our world view to better understand the difficult and persistent problem. See our resource list for great places to start or to continue learning. Next, we have be a witness. If you ever see a person in a position of power mistreating someone, stay and be a witness. You have the right to film law enforcement or other official statement if it's necessary. Okay, so when you saw someone did something wrong, you just need to be a witness, saw that situation, and you just need to stand up, speak up for yourself. Next, we have speak up when we hear something hurtful. It's always hard to know the right thing to say in the moment when you are having a problem, right? But we all need is the courage to say that doesn't seem right. So you need to be brave to speak up when you saw something that doesn't right and start the conversation. You need to stop the things that you saw that it will hurt yourself or your friends or the community. Let's proceed. Could there be trouble that can lead up to the solution of the end of racism? There are going to be some stubborn people with their strong belief that are going to want to change, as well as can stand in the if someone is very ignorant person and think they are right and they are wrong mindset, there will be no stop to racism. As well as if the system do not change, then there no way things that start to change as well as can't move forward. People that feel strongly of their belief could do things and can be dangerous to the society, and they could target people. So for the best solution that I think to end this racism, I feel the best possible solution to end racism is to be honestly come together as a unit and educate ourselves. Racism comes from lack of education and it's based on opinion and belief. But if we come together as one, we can fight racism as a country as one because we are one race and one human race.
What's your name?
My name is Nivnat Kumar. My name is Julio Axel Loising Wei. My name is Ryan Dino.
How old are you?
I'm 10 years old this year. 7 years old. 7 years old.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to be a paleontologist when I grow up. I want to be a firefighter. Actor.
Why?
I love digging fossils and I love dinosaurs. Because I want to rescue people. Nak beli sport car.
This is Amelia.
Hello. Hi.
What do you like about Amelia?
I like the hat she's wearing. She is so cute. I think she's friendly.
Anything else?
Everything.
Make a funny face. Hug her. Now slap her. Slap her. Slap her.
Why need to slap her? No. 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 It's not right to hurt people. It's not right to slap people. Pukul orang salah.
If Amelia had a different skin color with you, would you still be friends with her?
Yes,
Would you like to be friends with Amelia?
of course.
Would you like to be friends with Amelia?
Yes.
But Amelia has a different skin color with you. How can you still be friends?
Ada apa tak sama? What's wrong with colors? What's the difference? Sama je. Is there a difference? Siapa cakap tak sama?
So I hope you guys can learn about the videos before and now, and I hope you guys can get information from what we have been talked about the racism and also gender discrimination. So now we are end of our session and also discussion, and I'm gonna thank to Faik, Azri, Noreen, Hana, and also Jasmine for sharing their perspective and also their idea about what is racism and also gender discrimination. I hope you guys will gain more information by watching this video. That's all from us. Thank you so much and goodbye.